In the vast reaches of space, where stars glimmered like scattered diamonds across the endless black canvas of the universe, the Galactic Empire ruled supreme. For countless centuries, this empire had dominated thousands of star systems, stretching across countless galaxies. Its fleets were unmatched, its armies vast, and its influence so pervasive that entire civilizations bowed to its authority without question. Every corner of known space had been mapped, every planet categorized, and every species either subjugated or carefully observed. The Empire's power was unquestionable, and its reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency ensured that few dared to challenge it. In its grand strategy rooms, elaborate maps lit up with clusters of stars, lines tracing trade routes, military outposts, and territories under Imperial control. Every star system had a purpose, every fleet had a mission, and every diplomat knew that any misstep could result in catastrophic consequences. Despite its enormous reach, there were regions that the Empire considered insignificant regions, far from their main trade routes. Worlds that seemed backward or primitive, where civilizations had barely scratched the surface of technology. One such region was Terran space, the area surrounding the blue and green planet. Known as Earth, the Empire had long dismissed this cluster of star systems as unworthy of attention. The humans inhabiting these worlds were seen as primitive, barely capable of interstellar communication, and certainly incapable of posing any threat to the vast and powerful Galactic Empire. They were considered slow learners, limited in their ambitions, and trapped on a planet that barely allowed them to survive in large numbers. Yet, even in this dismissive view, Terran space had something peculiar about it. While the Empire largely ignored it, small disturbances occasionally reached their senses. Signals that were unusual, faint but persistent, sometimes suggested activity that did not entirely match the Empire's understanding of primitive civilizations. Scouts reported strange patterns in planetary atmospheres, unusual energy fluctuations, and the occasional transmission that seemed deliberate, organized, and intelligent. At first, these signals were dismissed as natural anomalies, random cosmic noise, or mistakes by overeager scouts. But as time went on, the frequency and clarity of these signals increased. The Empire began to notice a pattern. These humans were learning, observing, and somehow finding ways to reach beyond their small worlds. Imperial analysts studied the signals in detail. They were fascinated and, more importantly, concerned that humans had started to send communications beyond their home planet in a way that suggested they were organized, methodical, and capable of coordinated action. This was unusual for a species that had been considered primitive. Not only were the humans communicating, but they were also moving. Small ships had been detected leaving Terran space, venturing into nearby star systems. At first, the Empire's scientists argued that these were primitive exploratory missions, perhaps reckless, poorly equipped, and easily destroyed. But as reports kept coming in, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the reality. Humans were expanding, experimenting, and learning at an unprecedented pace. In the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, on the capital world of the Empire, advisors debated the significance of Terran space. Some argued that humans were not yet a threat and should remain ignored. Why waste resources on a civilization that, by all measures, was still in its infancy? Let them learn, let them grow slowly, and they could be managed or contained later if needed. Others, however, saw potential danger. A species that could develop interstellar capabilities quickly, that could communicate effectively, and that was capable of unexpected innovation, could pose a threat in the future. If ignored, the humans could one day surprise the Empire with technology or strategy beyond anything currently understood. These discussions were long, meticulous, and intense. Maps were unfolded, star charts analyzed, and every report scrutinized. The humans were still young in terms of galactic presence, but the trajectory of their growth was unlike anything the Empire had expected. As these debates continued, scouts were sent to gather more data. Unlike other regions where Imperial scouts could fly unchallenged and collect information freely, Terran space presented unexpected complexity. Humans were not passive. They were curious, observant, and adaptive. They noticed the occasional probes, responded to strange phenomena in unexpected ways, and learned quickly from their mistakes. Each encounter provided new data for the Empire, revealing not only their technological potential but also their unpredictable nature. Humans were not following any known patterns of development. They were unconventional in their thinking and resourceful in their problem-solving. Even the Empire, with all its vast experience in dealing with countless civilizations, began to realize that humans were unique. The Empire's approach to Terran space shifted subtly. While the humans were still considered a minor civilization, an unspoken sense of caution began to spread among military and political leaders. Intelligence officers compiled detailed reports, highlighting the humans' progress in communication, navigation, and even limited space exploration. They noted that humans had created ships capable of leaving their home systems, interacting with nearby planets, and surviving the harsh conditions of space. This was no small feat for a species previously regarded as primitive. Imperial scientists marveled at the ingenuity displayed by humans in these early stages. They were learning rapidly, improving their technology with astonishing speed, and finding creative solutions that defied expectations. The Galactic Empire, despite its immense power and confidence, was beginning to feel a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension. These humans, who had long been dismissed, were suddenly worth observing closely. Their rapid development, combined with their resilience and unpredictability, made them an unknown factor in the otherwise well-understood galaxy. The Empire recognized that intelligence alone was not the only measure of a civilization's potential. Adaptability, creativity, and the ability to learn from mistakes were equally important, and in these aspects, humans had shown remarkable promise. Meanwhile, on Earth and the surrounding Terran worlds, life went on mostly unaware of the Empire's distant gaze. Humans continued their exploration, driven by curiosity, ambition, and the desire to expand their understanding of the universe. They built rudimentary ships capable of interstellar travel, conducted experiments in communication, and established early colonies in nearby star systems. Each step forward was met with challenges: harsh environments, technical failures, and the constant need to adapt, but humans persevered. Their determination and ingenuity allowed them to survive and thrive where many would have failed. The contrast between the humans' humble beginnings and the Empire's grandeur could not have been more striking. On one side, a colossal empire with fleets that could obliterate entire planets and a bureaucracy that spanned galaxies. On the other, a young species struggling to leave their home world, learning to navigate the vastness of space with rudimentary technology and instinctive courage. Yet, despite the differences, there was a sense of inevitability. The humans were not content to remain small, confined to their home planet. Their curiosity, ambition, and ingenuity were driving them forward, step by step, into the larger galaxy. Imperial intelligence began to track human progress meticulously. Every new technological breakthrough, every new colony, and every unusual signal was logged and analyzed. Patterns emerged that were difficult to interpret, suggesting that humans were learning not just from their successes but from their failures as well. Unlike many civilizations the Empire had encountered, humans seemed to improve with every mistake. They were resilient in ways that other species often were not. This adaptability, combined with a natural resourcefulness, made them unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous, especially to a structured and hierarchical power like the Galactic Empire. By the end of this phase, the Empire had reached a cautious conclusion. Terran space, long ignored, could no longer be dismissed. Humans were still minor players on the galactic stage, but their trajectory suggested something more significant. The young species had begun to make small ripples in the fabric of interstellar civilization, ripples that, if ignored, could grow into waves. The Empire decided that humans needed to be watched carefully, not with the casual indifference of before, but with focused attention. They were to remain under observation, their actions catalogued, their growth monitored, and their potential carefully assessed. This was a species that could surprise even the most experienced Imperial commanders, and surprises in the wrong hands could be disastrous. Thus, the stage was set for the unfolding of events in Terran space. A seemingly insignificant region, long overlooked by the mightiest power in the galaxy, was slowly becoming a point of interest. Humans, unaware of the eyes watching them from across the stars, continued their journey of discovery and expansion. The Empire, intrigued and cautious, prepared to intervene if necessary, but for now, they would observe. What had been a forgotten cluster of stars was now quietly being recognized as a place of potential, a place where a young species might rise to challenge assumptions, defy expectations, and leave an indelible mark on the galaxy. Both sides were unaware of the true path ahead, yet the seeds of curiosity, tension, and impending conflict had already been sown. The humans of Terran space had always lived with a mixture of curiosity and ambition. From the earliest days of their interstellar attempts, they had sought to reach beyond their small home systems, building rudimentary starships and experimenting with long-range communication. While these efforts were initially crude, they demonstrated a determination and resourcefulness that were rare for a civilization of their age. Each failure was a lesson, and each small success fueled further exploration. Unknown to them, these very actions had begun to attract the attention of the Galactic Empire. Imperial scouts had been dispatched to monitor Terran space. At first, they observed the humans passively, noting their slow progress and apparent technological limitations. The Empire had considered humans to be primitive, barely able to venture beyond their home planet. Their ships were small, vulnerable, and poorly armed compared to even the lowest-ranking Imperial patrol craft. Yet, something about the humans' activity caught the scouts' attention. There were patterns in their behavior: planned expeditions, organized communication, coordinated exploration that suggested intelligence and ambition beyond what had been expected. The humans were sending signals into space, initially just as simple attempts to reach nearby planets, but gradually more organized and sophisticated. The Empire intercepted these signals, analyzing them with advanced machines designed to decode even the most complex alien communications. At first, the signals were dismissed as noise, or perhaps primitive attempts at interstellar messaging. But as the transmissions continued, the pattern became undeniable. Humans were not only attempting communication, they were learning how to communicate effectively across vast distances. They were experimenting, correcting mistakes, and adapting to failures, showing an ability to learn that the Empire had not anticipated. The early reports from the scouts were intriguing but confusing. Humans were unpredictable. Sometimes, they acted cautiously, carefully analyzing their surroundings and taking minimal risks. Other times, they launched expeditions that seemed reckless, sending ships into dangerous regions without apparent preparation. The scouts noted that despite these apparent risks, the humans often succeeded. Their ingenuity allowed them to navigate unknown space, survive environmental hazards, and even make contact with other minor species in ways that were unconventional but effective. The Empire began to see that humans possessed a combination of curiosity, courage, and adaptability that could not be ignored. At first, the Galactic Empire's leadership remained cautious. They did not want to overreact to a species that, by most measurements, was still weak. The early warning systems were simple. Patrol fleets were instructed to maintain observation, recording every movement, every transmission, and every new technological development. Analysts in Imperial command centers pored over the data, trying to predict the humans' next moves. They debated whether the species was simply lucky, whether their apparent ingenuity was sustainable, and whether humans might eventually plateau or collapse under their own ambition. For now, the humans were still small players in the galactic scheme, but their potential made them an object of interest. Meanwhile, the humans themselves were unaware of the eyes watching them from across the stars. They continued to explore their home systems, testing new technologies and sending small fleets to nearby planets. These expeditions were modest by Imperial standards but represented major steps for Terran civilization. Humans faced countless challenges, technical failures, hostile environments, and the ever-present risk of losing ships and crews. Yet they pressed on, driven by curiosity and a desire to understand the universe around them. Their resilience in the face of these difficulties made them even more remarkable to the Imperial observers. The Empire's initial reports of human activity were vague, filled with speculation about the species' capabilities. But as more data poured in, it became clear that humans were learning faster than expected. They were not simply repeating the same experiments, they were innovating. When a ship failed, they analyzed what went wrong and devised new strategies. When a planet proved inhospitable, they adapted their technology to survive. These small but crucial advancements demonstrated a capacity for learning and growth that few species in the Empire's history had shown. Human civilization, though still young, was evolving rapidly. Imperial scouts also began to notice something else. Humans were forming rudimentary colonies on nearby planets. These were not massive settlements. They were small outposts, carefully constructed to test survival in alien environments. Every colony represented a new challenge, a new opportunity for humans to learn and grow. The Empire observed with increasing interest as humans developed infrastructure, experimented with resource extraction, and coordinated supply lines across interplanetary distances. These colonies were primitive, but they showed organization, determination, and a willingness to take risks that the Empire did not expect. The humans' efforts were not without setbacks. Some early colonies failed, ships were lost, and communication systems broke down under harsh conditions, but each failure served as a learning opportunity. Humans adapted quickly, often in ways that defied Imperial expectations. They improvised solutions, sometimes using materials and methods that were unconventional but effective. This ability to adapt, to think creatively under pressure, was something the Empire had rarely seen in young civilizations. It suggested a potential for rapid growth, a quality that could not be measured simply by technological sophistication or fleet size. As humans expanded their reach, the Empire began to issue quiet warnings within its own fleets. The initial caution was subtle, almost procedural. Scouts were instructed to maintain a safe distance, to avoid interference unless absolutely necessary, and to continue monitoring. These instructions reflected the Empire's recognition that while humans were not yet a threat, they were becoming increasingly capable. Every new transmission, every new colony, every new expedition added to the growing impression that humans were intelligent, resourceful, and capable of independent action. The Empire began to realize that underestimating them could be a mistake. Within the Empire's bureaucratic centers, debates grew more heated. Some commanders argued that humans were still too primitive to matter. They pointed to the size and strength of Imperial fleets, the vastness of their military infrastructure, and the history of countless civilizations that had failed before reaching this stage. Why worry about humans now, when the Empire could easily crush them if needed? But others countered with cautionary tales. The galaxy had seen many small species rise quickly and unexpectedly, catching empires off guard. Humans were displaying unusual intelligence, creativity, and adaptability, qualities that could not be ignored. The argument shifted from whether humans were a threat to how and when the Empire should respond. The humans themselves continued to grow, largely unaware of the scrutiny they were under. They were solving problems that had long confounded early spacefaring civilizations: limited fuel, radiation hazards, extreme planetary conditions, and the challenge of long-term survival in space. Each problem was met with a combination of trial, error, and innovation. Ships were improved with new shielding, propulsion systems were upgraded, and communication networks were expanded. The humans were learning not just to survive but to thrive in conditions that had previously seemed impossible. Their progress was gradual but consistent, and each step forward was noted carefully by the Imperial scouts observing them. Even as humans expanded, their societies remained fragile. They were still vulnerable to environmental disasters, technical failures, and internal conflicts. Yet their determination and ability to cooperate for mutual survival allowed them to overcome these obstacles. The Empire began to see that humans were not only capable individually but also as a species. They had the potential to coordinate, strategize, and innovate on a scale that could eventually challenge even the most advanced civilizations. This realization added a new layer of tension to the Empire's observations. Humans were no longer merely interesting, they were a species with real potential. As the humans continued their expansion, the Galactic Empire began to formalize its observations. Detailed reports were compiled, cataloging every new technological advancement, every expedition, and every colony. Analysts examined human behavior, trying to predict patterns, strengths, and weaknesses. They studied how humans responded to adversity, how they collaborated, and how they adapted to new environments. The conclusion was clear. Humans were unpredictable. They did not conform to the patterns the Empire had seen in other civilizations. Their creativity, resilience, and rapid learning made them a unique subject of study. This period of observation and analysis led to a subtle shift in the Empire's approach. Humans were still not considered a direct threat, but they were no longer dismissed as insignificant. Patrol orders were adjusted, scouts instructed to maintain a closer watch, and contingency plans began to be drafted in case humans continued to grow and expand. The Empire recognized that while the humans were small now, their potential was something that could not be ignored indefinitely. They were a species to be watched carefully, a species that could surprise even the most experienced Imperial commanders. At the same time, humans continued to push forward, unaware of the attention they had drawn. Every new ship, every new colony, and every successful experiment strengthened their confidence and knowledge. Their society adapted to the challenges of interstellar expansion, learning not only how to survive but also how to plan strategically for the future. They became more efficient, more inventive, and more daring in their explorations. This rapid growth, combined with their resilience and ingenuity, made them an increasingly fascinating subject for the Galactic Empire. Humans were no longer simply primitive explorers. They were a species capable of learning, adapting, and growing in ways that were unexpected. They had captured the attention of the Empire not through strength or size, but through determination, intelligence, and the willingness to take risks. Imperial analysts, commanders, and diplomats began to realize that the humans' trajectory could eventually bring them into conflict with the Empire. This recognition set the stage for the next phase, where caution and strategy would become paramount. The humans of Terran space were unknowingly shaping the galaxy's perception of them. Their achievements, however modest in the Empire's eyes, marked the beginning of a slow but steady rise in significance. They were laying the foundations of a civilization that could one day challenge assumptions, defy expectations, and leave a lasting mark on the stars. Meanwhile, the Empire prepared, observing carefully, analyzing, and calculating every possibility. The humans were still young, but they were growing fast, and the Empire knew that sooner or later, these small, determined beings would demand attention, respect, and perhaps even confrontation. As humans continued to explore Terran space and the nearby star systems, their growth began to attract more attention. What had once seemed like small, harmless ventures now began to show the potential for something much larger. The Galactic Empire, which had long dismissed humans as primitive, started to recognize that their expansion was deliberate, coordinated, and increasingly bold. That humans were not merely surviving, they were organizing, learning, and applying strategies that showed a level of intelligence and foresight that Empire had not anticipated. The early skirmishes with minor obstacles, like navigating asteroid belts or surviving extreme planetary conditions, had taught humans resilience. They had developed ways to adapt quickly, using limited resources to solve problems creatively. Every challenge seemed to make them stronger, smarter, and more innovative. For the Empire, these qualities were alarming. They were used to civilizations following predictable patterns, growing slowly according to well-understood trajectories. Humans were different. They adapted in ways that no model or simulation could have predicted. Humans began sending expeditions to more distant systems, often encountering alien species that were barely explored by the Empire itself. While these alien species were minor and often not advanced enough to pose a threat, the humans approached them in ways that were strategic and sometimes audacious. They traded, negotiated, and even used diplomacy to secure resources, often outmaneuvering the aliens through creativity rather than military power. Imperial observers were stunned by this. In the Empire's experience, most young species would either fail outright or approach such situations with fear and hesitation. Humans, however, displayed confidence, intelligence, and a willingness to take calculated risks. These actions did not go unnoticed. Small clashes began to occur at the edges of Terran space. The Empire's scouts, initially observing quietly, occasionally found themselves in unexpected encounters with human ships. At first, these were minor incidents, a human vessel passing through restricted areas, testing boundaries, or exploring regions the Empire considered off. The humans did not provoke violence, but they did not retreat either. They were assertive, careful, and unpredictable. Imperial commanders began to realize that human behavior could not be anticipated using traditional models. This unpredictability created a sense of unease. The Empire, powerful as it was, had rarely encountered a species that challenged assumptions merely through exploration and intelligence. The humans' growing presence also caused tension within the Empire's command structure. Some commanders believed that a show of force was necessary to remind humans of their place in the galaxy. They argued that these small skirmishes, if left unchecked, could encourage the humans to expand further, potentially into systems that were strategically important to the Empire. Others counseled restraint, pointing out that the humans, while ambitious, were still relatively weak. Any aggressive action could backfire, turning a minor species into a dangerous opponent. These debates were intense, highlighting the Empire's unfamiliarity with handling a species as unconventional as humans. Despite these tensions, humans continued their expansion. They established colonies on newly discovered planets, often choosing locations that seemed inhospitable or challenging. These colonies were not large, they were strategic outposts, carefully planned to test human adaptability and resilience. The humans did not merely inhabit these worlds, they modified them, learning to harness resources, create sustainable habitats, and establish communication networks that connected distant colonies. Each colony was a laboratory, each failure a lesson, and each success a step toward long-term survival and influence. The Empire's scouts reported these developments meticulously. Every new colony, every successful expedition, and every interaction with alien species was documented. Analysts tried to predict the humans' next move, but the more data they collected, the less predictable the humans appeared. Unlike other civilizations that followed established patterns of expansion and diplomacy, humans relied on ingenuity, improvisation, and adaptive thinking. They learned from mistakes faster than the Empire expected, often turning failures into opportunities. This made the humans uniquely difficult to categorize or control. As human colonies became more established, the Galactic Empire faced a dilemma. The humans were still small compared to the Empire's vast fleets and resources, but their growth was steady and strategic. The Empire had a history of dominating younger civilizations, but humans did not behave like any species the Empire had previously encountered. Their unpredictability, resilience, and creativity challenged centuries of imperial doctrine. Commanders began to realize that conventional methods, force, intimidation, and bureaucracy might not be enough to contain this species if it continued to grow within human society. The expansion brought new challenges and opportunities. Colonies were isolated, often facing extreme environments, and each expedition tested the limits of human endurance. Crews dealt with mechanical failures, radiation storms, and unpredictable planetary conditions. Every expedition required careful planning, resource management, and problem-solving under pressure. Despite these difficulties, humans thrived. They learned to anticipate challenges, develop contingency plans, and innovate when traditional methods failed. The experience strengthened their resolve, honed their skills, and increased their confidence in facing larger and more complex challenges. The humans' interactions with alien species were particularly noteworthy. Unlike most young civilizations, humans approached diplomacy strategically. They assessed alien behavior, negotiated trade, and sometimes formed temporary alliances when it served mutual interests. These actions were not merely opportunistic, they were thoughtful, adaptive, and often unexpected. Imperial analysts were impressed by humans' ability to influence alien civilizations without resorting to outright force. The humans were demonstrating not only survival skills but also strategic thinking and social intelligence, traits that the Empire valued in advanced species. At the same time, the Empire's scouts continued to observe human ingenuity. They saw humans modify technology in unconventional ways, repurpose resources, and find solutions that were not immediately obvious. Where other species might have been limited by strict adherence to doctrine or established methods, humans relied on creativity, experimentation, and improvisation. These qualities made them dangerous in ways that were difficult to quantify. The Empire's analysts struggled to develop models to predict human behavior, realizing that conventional approaches were insufficient. As tensions increased, the humans' expansion began to draw more significant attention from the Empire. Small skirmishes at the edges of Terran space were no longer isolated incidents. They were indicators of a broader trend. Humans were not simply exploring, they were asserting a presence. establishing infrastructure and demonstrating a capacity for strategic thought. The Empire, which prided itself on control and predictability, recognized that the humans' unpredictability could pose a serious challenge if left unchecked. Commanders began drafting contingency plans for potential confrontations. Though many remained uncertain about the humans' ultimate capabilities, despite the Empire's concerns, humans remained largely unaware of the full extent of their observation. They focused on survival, exploration, and adaptation, unaware of the debates taking place in distant command centers. Each new expedition, each successful colony, and each diplomatic engagement strengthened their skills, knowledge, and confidence. Humans were learning not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that tested the limits of endurance and intelligence. Their achievements, though modest in scale, were significant in shaping their trajectory as a species, capable of challenging larger powers. The Empire's growing attention led to subtle changes in its policies. Scouts were instructed to monitor human expansion more closely, patrols were adjusted, and intelligence officers began drafting reports on potential scenarios involving human growth. The Empire recognized that humans were no longer simply an interesting curiosity. They were a species with the potential for significant influence. Any misstep, any underestimation, could result in humans developing capabilities that might challenge imperial authority. Commanders began to treat humans with a mixture of caution, respect, and wariness within human society. The expansion also created new dynamics. Colonies had to maintain communication with one another across vast distances, coordinate supply lines, and manage limited resources effectively. Leadership structures evolved, and humans developed methods of planning and problem-solving that were increasingly sophisticated. Each colony was not just a settlement, it was a learning environment, testing humans' ability to adapt to unpredictable challenges. Failures were analyzed, successes replicated, and innovations shared across systems. This continuous cycle of experimentation and adaptation gave humans an edge that few species had ever developed so early in their spacefaring history. The interactions between humans and the Galactic Empire were subtle but increasingly significant. Small skirmishes at system borders revealed both strengths and limitations on each side. Humans showed creativity and resilience, often surprising the Empire's scouts with unconventional tactics. The Empire, despite its overwhelming power, realized that humans were not easily categorized or controlled. They were intelligent, adaptive, and capable of rapid learning, a combination that made them uniquely challenging. These encounters set the stage for future confrontations, where the humans' ingenuity and determination would be tested against the full might of the Galactic Empire. Humans were no longer simply explorers. They were strategic, adaptive, and increasingly confident in their capabilities. Their expansion, though modest by galactic standards, demonstrated a level of foresight, resilience, and intelligence that made them noteworthy. The Empire recognized that humans could not be ignored, that their growth was deliberate, and that their unpredictability made them a potential challenge to imperial authority. Commanders began to prepare for scenarios where humans might confront or resist imperial forces, realizing that caution and careful observation were now essential. The humans of Terran space, meanwhile, continued their journey, unaware of the growing attention from the Empire. Each new colony, each successful expedition, and each diplomatic engagement strengthened their society, knowledge, and confidence. They were learning not just to survive but to adapt, innovate, and thrive in increasingly complex environments. Their expansion, while initially unnoticed by the larger galactic powers, had begun to create ripples that would eventually demand recognition. The stage was being set for a turning point, where humans' ingenuity, resilience, and strategic thinking would be tested against the broader forces of the galaxy. Humans were no longer simply developing, they were asserting themselves, growing in influence, and demonstrating capabilities that even the powerful Galactic Empire could not fully predict. The interactions, minor clashes, and ongoing expansions had transformed Terran space into a region of growing importance. The Empire watched, analyzed, and debated, realizing that humans were no longer a trivial curiosity, but a species with the potential to shape the future of the galaxy. The moment that changed everything in Terran space began quietly, almost imperceptibly. The humans were continuing their gradual expansion, exploring new systems, establishing colonies, and experimenting with interstellar communication. For years they had remained largely undisturbed, observed only by distant imperial scouts who recorded every movement, every signal, every success and failure. The Galactic Empire, despite its immense power and centuries of experience, had underestimated the humans' potential, assuming that they would continue to grow slowly and predictably. Yet, the humans were about to prove that they were capable of more than anyone had imagined. It began when the Empire decided to dispatch a full-scale reconnaissance fleet into Terran space. That was not a casual observation mission. It was a deliberate attempt to assess the humans' true capabilities. Commanders were instructed to evaluate technological sophistication, resourcefulness, tactical intelligence, and the potential threat humans might pose in the future. The fleet was massive by Terran standards, though modest by imperial standards. equipped with advanced sensors, defensive weapons, and monitoring systems. Its purpose was clear: gather data, test the humans, and ensure that the Empire maintained control over the region. As the fleet approached, humans remained unaware of the scale of the Imperial presence. They continued their daily operations, conducting scientific experiments, managing colonies, and exploring nearby star systems. They noticed some strange anomalies in space energy readings, sensor disruptions, but they had no reason to suspect a fleet of the Empire itself. Humans were still cautious, but their confidence had grown through years of exploration and adaptation. They had survived harsh conditions, navigated treacherous space environments, and successfully maintained colonies in multiple star systems. Their resilience had been tested repeatedly, and each challenge had strengthened their ingenuity and resourcefulness. When the Imperial fleet finally made contact, the encounter was dramatic. Human vessels, designed primarily for exploration and survival rather than combat, suddenly found themselves facing the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The Imperial ships were sleek, heavily armed, and capable of unmatched maneuverability. Sensors scanned human colonies, ships, and communications, recording every detail for analysis. For humans, this was the first encounter with a force so powerful, so imposing, that it challenged everything they knew about spacefaring civilizations. Fear and awe mixed in equal measure, yet there was no panic. Humans had learned to adapt, and adaptation would be their greatest strength in the moments ahead. The initial confrontation tested humans in ways that were unprecedented. Imperial forces used advanced scanning techniques to probe human technology, analyzing propulsion systems, communication networks, and defensive measures. Humans responded instinctively, using every tactic and resource at their disposal. They maneuvered their ships strategically, coordinated between colonies, and utilized creative problem-solving to avoid disaster. Their actions were not random. They were calculated, adaptive, and unpredictable. Imperial analysts were both impressed and frustrated. The humans were learning, responding, and innovating in real time, often in ways that confounded expectations. This encounter marked the first real demonstration of humans' ingenuity in the eyes of the Empire. They were not simply surviving, they were actively engaging with a far superior force in a manner that showed strategy and intelligence. Humans improvised, using their limited resources in creative ways to compensate for technological disadvantages. They leveraged the environment, such as asteroid fields, planetary atmospheres, and spatial anomalies, to gain tactical advantages. They anticipated Imperial movements, adjusted strategies, and even communicated secretly between colonies to coordinate actions that the Empire had not predicted. The results were astonishing. Though humans could not hope to overpower the Empire militarily, they demonstrated capabilities that suggested rapid growth potential. Their resourcefulness, adaptability, and intelligence were clearly evident. Imperial commanders began to realize that humans were not merely primitive explorers. They were a species capable of understanding, learning, and responding to far more advanced forces. Each move the humans made challenged assumptions about how a young civilization should behave in the face of overwhelming power. For the first time, the Empire had to reconsider its initial dismissal of Terran space as insignificant. The encounter also revealed a critical aspect of human society: resilience under pressure. Humans had always faced difficulties, from harsh planetary conditions to technical failures, and they had learned to persevere. Now, facing the Empire itself, these traits were amplified. Human crews remained calm, thinking clearly under extreme stress. Decision-making was decentralized. Colony leaders and ship commanders were empowered to act independently when necessary. This flexibility, combined with rapid problem-solving and ingenuity, allowed humans to respond in ways the Empire could not easily predict. Imperial analysts noted that humans had an unusual capacity to adapt quickly, even in life-or-death situations. Despite the humans' ingenuity, the encounter was tense and dangerous. Imperial forces could have destroyed human colonies and ships with ease, yet there was a restraint in their actions. The fleet's mission was reconnaissance and assessment, not annihilation. The Empire wanted data, not casualties, at least initially. They observed human strategies, tested responses, and recorded outcomes, all while maintaining a careful distance. Humans, unaware of the full scope of Imperial power, responded instinctively, balancing caution with creativity. Their actions demonstrated not only survival skills but also a level of tactical intelligence that surprised even the most experienced Imperial commanders. During this confrontation, humans achieved small but significant victories. They managed to evade traps, avoid detection in critical moments, and use limited weaponry and defenses to protect colonies. They communicated efficiently, shared intelligence across distances, and coordinated strategies between multiple star systems. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced their confidence and showed the Empire that humans were not easily defeated. Imperial officers began to acknowledge that humans' unpredictability and problems ability were not just quirks, they were inherent, the strengths of the species. The turning point in this phase was the realization that humans could not be underestimated. The Empire, accustomed to seeing young civilizations as passive or easily controlled, faced an unprecedented situation. Here was a species that was small in size and resources, yet capable of creative problem-solving, strategic thinking, and adaptation under pressure. Humans' actions challenged centuries of imperial doctrine, which had assumed that power alone dictated outcomes. Now, the Empire had to account for intelligence, adaptability, and resilience as factors in their calculations. Humans were no longer a minor curiosity, they were a species with the potential to disrupt expectations and create challenges that could not be ignored. This encounter also had lasting effects on human society. Colonies that survived the imperial assessment gained invaluable experience. Crews and leaders learned to anticipate threats, think strategically, and coordinate more effectively across distances. Humans developed new technologies, adapted existing systems, and refined communication networks. The experience, while dangerous and stressful, accelerated their growth and understanding of interstellar strategy. Each challenge, each encounter, became a lesson that prepared them for future conflicts and opportunities. Humans' confidence grew, not from victory in battle, but from the realization that their intelligence, adaptability, and coordination could meet even the most formidable forces. For the Galactic Empire, the encounter prompted a reassessment of its approach to Terran space. The humans' ingenuity and resilience made clear that traditional methods of control, intimidation, military superiority, and bureaucratic oversight might not be sufficient. Commanders began to issue cautious advisories. Humans were to be monitored closely, future interactions handled delicately, and aggressive actions avoided unless absolutely necessary. The Empire recognized that humans' unpredictable nature was both a potential threat and a curiosity that warranted further observation. As a result of this turning point, both sides began to evolve. Humans, having faced a superior force and survived through ingenuity and coordination, gained confidence and knowledge. They were more strategic, better prepared, and more capable of handling challenges than ever before. The Empire, having witnessed humans' adaptability firsthand, recognized that this was a species that could not be dismissed lightly. Commanders began to plan carefully, taking into account human creativity, resilience, and rapid learning as variables in future strategies. Terran space was no longer ignored. Humans were no longer considered trivial. Both sides had learned from the encounter. Humans discovered the extent of potential threats, while the Empire realized the limitations of raw power when faced with intelligence, adaptability, and ingenuity. The turning point had reshaped perceptions, strategies, and expectations. Humans had survived and learned. The Empire had observed and recalibrated, and the stage was set for a new era of cautious interaction, respect, and potential confrontation. Humans had not only survived their first major encounter with the Empire, but they had also demonstrated qualities that ensured they would not be underestimated again. Their ingenuity, resourcefulness, and coordination had been proven in real time, while the Empire had come to recognize the unique challenge posed by a species capable of adapting under extreme conditions. Terran space, once a quiet backwater, had now become a region of strategic importance. Its inhabitants acknowledged as a species that required respect, attention, and careful observation. The turning point had fundamentally altered the course of history. Humans were no longer passive participants in the galaxy. They were active players, capable of facing powerful forces with intelligence and creativity. The Empire, meanwhile, began to approach the situation with a mixture of caution, curiosity, and strategic planning. Both sides had learned crucial lessons, and the stage was set for future encounters that would test humans' ingenuity and resilience against the full might of the Galactic Empire. The encounter would be remembered as the moment when humans proved they were capable of more than anyone had expected, a moment that changed the balance of perception in the galaxy forever. The moment after the confrontation with the Galactic Empire became a defining chapter in human history. The humans had faced a force far beyond their technological and military capabilities. Yet, they had survived, adapted, and learned from the encounter. Their ingenuity and coordination had allowed them to navigate a situation that would have destroyed most other civilizations, earning them recognition, albeit cautiously, from the Empire. It was in this phase that the delicate balance between Terran expansion and imperial observation took shape, creating a period of both tension and opportunity that would define the future. The humans, having survived their first major encounter with the Empire, were immediately faced with a new reality. They now understood that the galaxy was home to civilizations far more powerful than themselves. Civilizations that could easily annihilate entire star systems if provoked. Yet this knowledge did not instill fear alone, it inspired a renewed sense of purpose. Humans realized that survival required more than just ingenuity and courage. It required planning, strategic thinking, and preparation for the possibility of future confrontations. Every decision, from the placement of new colonies to the design of ships, now carried greater weight, and human leaders took these responsibilities seriously. Colonies across Terran space began to implement stricter protocols for communication, defense, and resource management. Humans understood that they could not rely solely on luck or improvisation in future encounters. They developed better systems for coordinating between distant outposts, ensuring that information about potential threats could travel quickly and accurately across vast distances. Crews were trained in both technical problem-solving and tactical awareness, and leadership structures were refined to allow for faster, more effective decision-making. The experience of facing the Empire had instilled a sense of urgency, but also confidence, in the human capacity to survive and adapt. The Empire, for its part, took the encounter seriously. The formal warning issued to its fleet stay out of Terran space was unprecedented. Never before had the Empire treated a relatively small and previously dismissed civilization with such caution. Analysts and commanders understood that humans were unpredictable, adaptive, and capable of learning quickly. They recognized that conventional methods of control, intimidation, overwhelming force, and bureaucracy might not work against a species that relied on ingenuity and resourcefulness. The Empire's approach shifted from passive observation to careful management, monitoring humans closely while avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Diplomatic efforts began quietly but deliberately. The Empire understood that direct aggression could provoke humans, potentially accelerating their development and making them an even more formidable presence in the future. As a result, indirect communication and signals were sent, emphasizing boundaries and caution. Humans received these messages with curiosity and wariness. Though they did not fully comprehend the scale of the Empire's power, they sensed the seriousness behind the warning. Terran leaders debated how to respond, balancing the desire to continue exploration with the need to avoid provoking a civilization far more powerful than themselves. Despite the tension, humans continued to grow and expand strategically. They established new colonies in previously unexplored systems, focusing on locations that were challenging but offered long-term advantages. Each colony was designed with sustainability, adaptability, and defense in mind. Human engineers developed modular habitats capable of withstanding extreme conditions, while scientists explored new methods for generating energy and extracting resources from hostile environments. These advancements were incremental but cumulative, strengthening the overall resilience and capability of Terran civilization. The experience of surviving the Empire's reconnaissance fleet had also reshaped human military strategy. Humans understood that they could not match the Empire's ship for ship, but they could use ingenuity, tactical thinking, and adaptability to survive engagements. They focused on asymmetric strategies using terrain, environmental factors, and creative maneuvers to gain advantages in situations where direct confrontation was impossible. They developed protocols for intelligence gathering, quick decision-making, and coordination across vast distances, ensuring that colonies and fleets could respond effectively to threats. These strategies, though modest compared to imperial doctrine, were highly effective in the context of human capabilities. The realization that the galaxy was vast and full of unknown civilizations fostered a sense of unity and shared purpose. Leaders, scientists, engineers, and explorers collaborated more closely, sharing knowledge and experience across systems. The human population, though still small compared to the Empire, became more organized and resilient. Communities developed a culture of preparedness, innovation, and mutual support, ensuring that each colony could contribute to the survival and growth of the species as a whole. The encounter with the Empire had acted as a catalyst, accelerating social, technological, and strategic development in ways that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. Humans also learned the importance of intelligence and observation. They began to study patterns in imperial activity, analyzing fleet movements, communication signals, and strategic priorities. While they did not have the technological sophistication of the Empire, humans relied on careful observation, deduction, and experimentation. They developed early warning systems, sensor networks, and monitoring protocols that allowed them to anticipate potential threats. These systems were primitive compared to imperial standards but highly effective within the context of human capabilities, providing critical information that could save lives and protect colonies in the event of future confrontations. The Empire, observing these developments, remained cautious. While humans had not yet achieved a level of power to challenge imperial authority, their rapid growth and adaptability had been noted. Commanders debated how to manage the humans going forward. Some argued that humans should be contained, their expansion limited to prevent future conflicts. Others suggested that careful observation and indirect influence could allow the Empire to guide human development without direct intervention. Regardless of the approach, there was a shared understanding that humans were no longer insignificant. They were a species with potential, capable of learning quickly and responding to challenges in ways that the Empire could not fully predict. Within Terran space, humans also began to reflect on their achievements and limitations. Colonies that had survived encounters with both environmental challenges and the Empire's reconnaissance fleet gained valuable experience. Scientists and engineers analyzed every success and failure, developing improved technologies and strategies. Crews shared lessons learned, and leadership structures were refined to ensure that future decisions could be made quickly and effectively. humans were becoming more confident, not because they were invincible, but because they understood the value of preparation, observation, and adaptation. This period of development and reflection strengthened humans' sense of identity and purpose. They were no longer isolated explorers but a civilization, capable of surviving and thriving in a galaxy filled with powerful and unpredictable forces. The lessons learned from the encounter with the Empire were integrated into every aspect of human society. From technology and strategy to governance and diplomacy, humans had proven to themselves that intelligence, adaptability, and coordination could overcome challenges that might have seemed insurmountable. This newfound confidence would shape their decisions and actions for generations to come. One of the most significant outcomes of this phase was the establishment of a long-term strategy for Terran space. Humans recognized that survival required not only expansion and adaptation but also the careful management of relationships with other civilizations. While the Empire was the most powerful and immediate concern, humans also considered potential interactions with other alien species, trade opportunities, and the exploration of unknown systems. Their strategy emphasized flexibility, adaptability, and continuous learning, ensuring that Terran civilization could respond effectively to any challenge, whether from the Empire or from other civilizations they might encounter. Humans also developed a greater appreciation for the limits and strengths of their technology. The encounter with the Empire revealed vulnerabilities that had been previously overlooked, prompting rapid innovation and improvement. Engineers and scientists worked to enhance propulsion systems, develop more effective shields, and improve communication and coordination across long distances. Each improvement, while small in isolation, contributed to the overall resilience and capability of human civilization. The experience had demonstrated that survival in the galaxy required more than courage. It required constant adaptation, learning, and innovation at the same time. The Galactic Empire continued to observe and adjust its approach. The formal warning "stay out of Terran space" was not issued lightly. It reflected a recognition of humans' growing capabilities and the need to prevent unnecessary conflict. Imperial commanders remained vigilant, monitoring human expansion, analyzing technological developments, and preparing contingency plans. While humans were not yet a threat to the Empire, their ingenuity and adaptability had earned cautious respect. The Empire understood that underestimating humans could have unforeseen consequences, and they approached the situation with a combination of caution, observation, and strategic planning. Colonies shared knowledge and resources, coordinated defense strategies, and maintained communication networks that spanned multiple star systems. Leaders encouraged innovation and adaptability, understanding that survival depended on the ability to respond quickly and effectively to new challenges. Humans had learned that intelligence alone was not sufficient. Coordination, resource management, and strategic planning were equally critical. These lessons, learned under pressure, would serve them well in the decades and centuries to come. Humans had not only survived the Empire's reconnaissance but had also grown stronger, more confident, and more capable. Their colonies were more resilient, their technology more advanced, and their society more organized. They had learned the value of preparation, observation, and adaptability, and they had proven that they could face even the most powerful civilizations with intelligence and ingenuity. The formal warning from the Empire marked a new chapter in Terran history. Humans were recognized as a species with potential, worthy of attention, caution, and respect. Humans had demonstrated that their growth, ingenuity, and resilience could not be ignored. The Empire, while still overwhelmingly powerful, had learned to approach Terran space with caution. Humans, in turn, had gained confidence in their ability to survive and thrive, even in the presence of forces far greater than themselves. The encounter had created a fragile balance, a mixture of respect, caution, and strategic awareness that would define the relationship between humans and the Galactic Empire for years to come. Humans emerged from this phase not as conquerors but as survivors, innovators, and strategists. They had faced a challenge that could have destroyed them and had turned it into an opportunity for growth. The lessons learned would guide their decisions, shape their strategies, and strengthen their society for the challenges that lay ahead. Terran space, once ignored by the galaxy's most powerful empire, and had become a place of significance, where humans had proven their potential and earned a place in the broader cosmic order. The final phase of this remarkable chapter in human history marked the beginning of a new era. Humans had endured their first major interactions with the Galactic Empire, survived challenges that could have destroyed their civilization, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more strategic. The lessons they had learned throughout their expansion, adaptability, ingenuity, coordination, and resilience were now firmly embedded in every aspect of Terran society. This phase was about consolidation, reflection, and the preparation for a future in which humans would no longer be minor players, but a species capable of shaping the course of galactic events. Following the formal warning issued by the Empire, humans realized that they were living under the gaze of a power far greater than themselves. For the first time, there was a clear understanding that their actions were being observed on a scale that could have consequences beyond imagination. Yet, instead of retreating in fear, Humans chose to use this new awareness as a catalyst for growth. They understood that survival would require careful planning, careful observation, and deliberate expansion, but also boldness. The recognition of the Empire's presence was no longer merely intimidating. It became a motivator to develop and refine every capability they possessed. Terran colonies began to consolidate their resources. Early lessons in survival had taught humans the value of redundancy, coordination, and efficiency. Colonies that had been scattered and semi-independent were now linked through improved communication networks, allowing for faster exchange of information, resources, and strategic directives. This consolidation not only improved security but also allowed human civilization to function as a more unified whole. When one colony faced a challenge, whether a natural disaster, technical failure, or environmental hazard, other colonies could assist more effectively. The Empire's observation had made humans more aware of their vulnerabilities, but it also provided the impetus to overcome them. Collectively, humans invested heavily in technological advancement during this period. While still primitive compared to the Empire's level, human technology was rapidly evolving. Scientists and engineers developed more advanced propulsion systems, better shields for ships, and enhanced sensors capable of detecting environmental hazards across vast distances. Lessons learned from surviving Imperial encounters directly influenced these developments. Human technology was no longer purely functional, it became adaptive. Ships were designed to respond to unexpected threats. Habitats were created to withstand extreme conditions, and communication systems were optimized to relay critical information across entire star systems. Each advancement reinforced humans' ability to survive, thrive, and grow in the challenging environment of space. The social and political structures of Terran society also matured. Leaders recognized that survival required not only technology but coordination, planning, and strategic foresight. Governments developed councils to oversee colony expansion, military readiness, and scientific research. Leadership became more decentralized in practical terms, allowing colony leaders to make real-time decisions while still following broader strategic goals. This balance of autonomy and centralized coordination allowed humans to act efficiently in unpredictable situations. A lesson learned directly from facing the Empire. The ability to make rapid decisions under pressure became a hallmark of Terran civilization. Humans also began to consider diplomacy in a more sophisticated way. They realized that they were part of a larger galaxy filled with intelligent species, some of whom might be allies, competitors, or threats. Even the distant Empire, while overwhelmingly powerful, had limitations in understanding humans' adaptability and creativity. By studying alien species, negotiating trade, and forming tentative alliances, humans expanded their influence without direct confrontation. They understood that survival and growth were not only about military strength, they were about strategic relationships, information gathering, and creative problem-solving. Every diplomatic engagement became a learning opportunity, teaching humans the value of communication, observation, and strategic foresight. The experience of facing the Empire had a profound psychological impact on human society. Fear was replaced by respect for the realities of the galaxy, but confidence grew in equal measure. Humans recognized that they could survive against superior forces if they remained intelligent, adaptive, and coordinated. This newfound confidence transformed culture, inspiring new generations to innovate, explore, and embrace the challenges of space. Education, research, and experimentation became central pillars of Terran society. Humans were no longer simply reacting to circumstances, they were actively shaping their destiny. Aware of both the dangers and the opportunities that lay ahead, military strategy became another crucial focus during this phase. Humans understood that they could not compete with the Empire in brute force, but they could leverage creativity, tactics, and environmental advantages. Training programs emphasized flexibility, quick decision-making, and innovative problem-solving. Small fleets were designed for mobility and versatility, capable of responding to threats in ways that larger, slower Imperial vessels could not anticipate. Humans also developed contingency plans for potential conflicts, ensuring that no single failure could cripple their civilization. The emphasis on asymmetric strategy allowed humans to protect themselves effectively without provoking a larger, overwhelming confrontation. This phase also saw the expansion of human exploration beyond previously charted systems. Humans were cautious but deliberate in their expansion, choosing planets and star systems that offered both resources and strategic advantages. Each new colony was carefully planned, with consideration for defense, sustainability, and long-term growth. Humans were no longer explorers in the sense of curiosity alone. They were strategists, planners, and innovators. Every decision about where to settle, what technology to develop, and how to allocate resources was influenced by the lessons learned from previous challenges, including their encounters with the Empire. The Galactic Empire continued to observe these developments with a mixture of caution and fascination. Commanders noted the humans' resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity, acknowledging that this species was unlike any they had previously encountered. The formal warning had been issued not merely as a threat but as an acknowledgement that the Empire had to monitor human activity carefully. Analysts studied every new development, from colony expansion to technological innovation, attempting to predict human behavior. Yet humans remained unpredictable, using intelligence, creativity, and coordination to achieve outcomes that confounded expectations. The Empire recognized that this unpredictability made humans a unique and potentially influential presence in the galaxy. Human society, aware of the Empire's observation but undeterred, began to focus on long-term sustainability. Resource management became more sophisticated, with colonies coordinating to ensure that raw materials, energy, and critical supplies could be shared and conserved efficiently. Humans learned to anticipate risks, plan for contingencies, and adapt quickly to unforeseen challenges. Each success reinforced confidence, while each failure provided invaluable lessons. Terran civilization was no longer simply surviving in space, it was learning to thrive strategically, technologically and socially. Education and knowledge sharing became central to human progress. Scientists, engineers, and explorers documented every discovery, every innovation, and every challenge overcome. This information was shared across colonies, creating a network of knowledge that strengthened the entire civilization. Humans had learned that the ability to communicate, share, and apply knowledge effectively was as critical as any technological advancement. The encounter with the Empire had demonstrated that intelligence, creativity, and coordination were powerful tools, perhaps even more powerful than sheer numbers or firepower. Humanity's relationship with the galaxy began to shift. No longer isolated, humans now understood themselves as part of a broader cosmic community, one filled with both danger and opportunity. The lessons learned from Imperial observation informed every aspect of strategy, exploration, and governance. Humans recognized that the future would demand not only survival but also foresight, innovation, and the ability to influence outcomes. This phase marked the transition from reactive survival to proactive planning, from curiosity-driven exploration to strategic development, laying the foundation for a civilization capable of facing challenges far greater than themselves. The experience also strengthened human culture and identity. The stories of survival, ingenuity, and adaptation were passed down across generations, creating a shared sense of purpose and resilience. Humans celebrated not only technological achievements but also the intellectual and strategic accomplishments that allowed them to survive in a galaxy dominated by far more powerful civilizations. These narratives reinforced social cohesion, inspired innovation, and cultivated a culture of preparedness, resourcefulness, and boldness. Terran society emerged more unified, confident, and capable than ever before. Humans had transformed from a species struggling to survive in interstellar space into a civilization aware of its potential and capable of shaping its destiny. They had learned to balance caution with boldness, innovation with strategic thinking, and independence with collaboration. The Empire, while still far more powerful, had come to recognize humans as a species worthy of attention, respect, and careful monitoring. Humans were no longer simply explorers. They were innovators, strategists, and survivors, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy might present. This phase of aftermath and reflection cemented the lessons of the previous encounters. Humans had internalized the importance of adaptability, resilience, coordination, and intelligence. They had strengthened their colonies, refined their technology, developed effective strategies, and nurtured a culture that valued knowledge, creativity, and strategic foresight. The experience of facing the Empire had been transformative, shaping every aspect of human civilization, from leadership and governance to science, education, and culture. Ultimately, this phase marked the emergence of humans as a significant presence in the galaxy. They were small compared to the Empire, but they were clever, adaptable, and resilient, a combination that ensured they could survive and grow in the face of overwhelming challenges. Terran space had become a region of strategic importance, a laboratory for innovation and adaptation, and a home to a civilization that had learned to face adversity with intelligence and determination. The lessons learned in this phase would guide humans for generations, preparing them for future challenges, opportunities, and encounters in the vast, unpredictable expanse of the galaxy.